Afternoon Talk on SAFM.
So, today is July the 11th. Any sense of significance in all of that? So you may say, yeah, it's the day after July the 10th. No. 2 years ago on this very day, July the 11th, the World Cup, the 2010 World Cup ended in this country, with the Spanish beating the Netherlands by 1-0. The goal coming late. We're not talking soccer. But clearly, what I want to ask you, the big question, what were your thoughts about South Africa then? What are your thoughts about South Africa now? And the other issues that you can throw into the big question pot is, so was it all worth it? What are the lessons that we've learned in hosting that 2010 World Cup? And as we talk, let's not talk soccer, because I'm really not talking about Bafana. We're talking about the hosting of a World Cup of a nation. Throw in social cohesion as well, which we'll talk about. We'll talk to two guests about that. Danny Jordaan, the CEO of the 2010 World Cup Local Organising Committee. We'll talk to him in a few minutes' time, as well as Dr. Nicholas Ebattle, who's the author of Brand Ovation and many other books as well, including how South Africa won the World Cup. Or South Africa, what's it, the nation of champions is what it is. Okay, that comes up now. Then after 2:30, as you know, on a Wednesday we go where we talk entrepreneurship, so money makers, good tips for you in terms of how you can make some serious money, and don't we all need that indeed. And then after 3, my In the Spotlight guest today is the actor Tumisho Masha. Now Tumisho has done just about everything that you need to do in acting, including he's been a top billing presenter, which is very topical considering the current top billing presenter search. But we'll talk to him about things like that as well. That comes up later. You know the number if you want to call in, 0891 104207, 0891 104207. SMSs 34701. That will cost you R2. You can tweet me, Ashraf Garda1, and if you want to pick up emails, ashraf@safm.co.za. Also, people commenting on my Facebook page as well. Okay, we'll get to Denny in just a second. Let's start very quickly with Nicholas Ebattle. He's got this book here, Nation of Champions, How Team South Africa has won the World Cup. So, Nicholas, thanks for coming in. I haven't chatted in a long time. Am I then to suggest that because of this, you're very clear about it, the 2 years after the World Cup, there were some great lessons that South Africa has learned, and in fact, that overall as a nation, we clearly won and not lost, despite some negative sentiment that's being discussed recently?
Well, thanks, Ashraf. The ultimate judges are clearly the visitors. And according to the visitor feedback we got, we beat the Germans. That got 88% of visitors saying, yes, great destination, we will come back. South Africa achieved a so-called net promoter score of 92%. And we've seen the returns in investment in tourism. We had a great year in tourism last year. Cape Town has just been voted by TripAdvisor as the best destination in the world. And we've seen the knock-on effect in quite a number of key economic indicators.
So your thoughts, all things considered, the vital lessons to be learned from the World Cup?
Well, the vital lesson for me really is twofold. The one is obviously about nation building. We've seen how it did bring the nation together. It did that in Germany. It did it in 2010. But that opportunity was really squandered when a few weeks thereafter, as you know, we had the public service strike, and that momentum was lost. The lessons thereof is how can we recreate that momentum. And that momentum really came together 2 days before the World Cup kickoff on the 9th of June. This is massive parade.
Well, we celebrated winning the World Cup before the World Cup. Okay, we'll never forget that, indeed. Right. I want to invite you as well, because I certainly want to get your thoughts. So think about this one. What are the lessons that we've learned from hosting the World Cup? Because I speak to you today exactly 2 years to the day that the World Cup in this country ended. Can you believe it? It's already 2 years. So the lessons learned, one, was it all worth it? Another one. Social cohesion in terms of those type of lessons that you think we may well have learned. And then perhaps the point that Nicholas Ebattle has made, how can we bottle all of that up now as we look beyond 2010, because we now 2 years down the line. Let's get on the line now. Danny Jordaan, the CEO of the Local Organising Committee for that 2010 World Cup. Danny, good afternoon. Hi.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm very good. It's something that you know that nobody can ever take away from you, isn't it? That you were the CEO of the time when we hosted that Soccer World Cup. Incredible. Your thoughts 2 years down the line about the World Cup?
Yes, and nor can anyone take it away from the country. It was an incredible moment. Yeah, I think we are still talking about it. You saw the recent conference on social cohesion, and everybody says that during those 30 days of the World Cup, we actually saw the kind of South Africa that we want to live in. A South Africa that works, that embraces everybody, that welcomes the world, and is celebrated, but at the same time, work got done. All the hard work went ahead in order that everyone could find his or her space in our country. And I think when we look back over the 30 days, probably we'll all say, we should all work together to make that a permanent feature of our country.
That clearly is the challenge. Your thoughts then, and we'll certainly talk about social cohesion in a second, because I think it's an important legacy. The lessons, in your opinion, that we learned from hosting the World Cup have been what?
Well, in a project like that, and I think in bringing about that atmosphere, and what prevailed then on a sustainable basis clearly requires the same level of cooperation between, we had civil society, we had trade unions, we had the government, we had political parties, we had host cities, everyone supporting and working hard to achieve whatever needed to be achieved and to be put in place. You start with the infrastructure, whether it was the airport, the roads, the Gautrain, everybody understood that on the 11th of June, the match must kick off and things must be in place. So there was a sense of urgency and a celebration of the accomplishment that when we tackle a task, we must identify who are all the role players and work together to achieve it. And then we can all claim the success. And I think the preparation was the first thing, and that is what we criticized. We were told the infrastructure will not be ready. We achieved that, and the trade unions that played a major role in us finishing the infrastructure, the construction companies, and everyone who participated there.
Okay, we certainly.
When it came to the marketing and the promotion of the event, and whether it was at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, or in Cape Town, there was a sense of the business community also supporting. So every sector of society realized that they had a contribution to make and made it. And so in the end, by the time the team started arriving, we knew that everything was in place, we were ready, and now it's just to make sure that the operation must run smoothly.
All right.
And in the end, we celebrated on the 11th of July.
Okay. Well, in fact, the Spaniards celebrated. But I certainly want to ask you, as well as Nicholas E. Battle, whether in fact whatever we put in around 2010, was it worth it? 2 years later, that means, are we now reaping the benefits or not? But hold that thought, because we'll get some answers from both of you right after this.
Afternoon Talk on SAFM.
Right, so we are talking about the World Cup 2010. It's exactly 2 years to this day that curtain came down on the 2010 World Cup, with Spain beating the Dutch by 1-0. We are not talking soccer, because the World Cup, as we know, was never really about football, was it? It was a lot more than that. We are talking about the lessons learned 2 years later, and was it all worth it? Two guests, Danny Jordaan, the CEO of the 2010 Local Organising Committee, with me, as well as Dr. Nicholas E. Battle, who's also written a book now, The Nation of Champions, How Team South Africa Won the World Cup. Nicholas, let me bring you in on this one. I want to get your thoughts, by the way, if you want to call in, 0891 104 207. So 2 years later, has it been worth it for South Africa, on reflection, keeping in mind the point that Danny made about the infrastructure improvement, etc., but it's obviously come at a cost, right? Has it all been worth it when you reflect 2 years later?
Well, internationally...
And I'm isolating the soccer aspect, because that's a different ballgame for soccer fans.
Internationally, the two big touchpoints have really been nation branding, where the perceptions have been reversed, the stereotypes about South Africa being an unsafe destination. In fact, I've just been to the Euro, and the guys are still talking about the closing ceremony, this fantastic technology, and they couldn't believe that we got a Gautrain. The city of Munich could not afford a Gautrain. Now, this is a big touchpoint. And the perceptions of crime, safety and security, remember just before the World Cup, we had this incident in Angola, we had the BBC warning travelers about stabbing vests, advising. All of that has gone away. And even the domestic media, as you know, is not focusing on crime anymore. This has been a big advantage. It's been a big touch point, and it's really done a lot of positive things for investors and tourists, visitors to this country.
All right. Now, there's also a sense for many people, and maybe understandably so, that South Africa as the country will get rich because of the World Cup, and they individually will also get rich. Now, as we know, in the light of the many service delivery protests around the country, in fact, there's a sense at the moment that South Africa is becoming even more and more disillusioned. So what I'm saying is the genie now out of the bottle and the magic all gone?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there hasn't been a single World Cup where the people have become rich. And even in Brazil, who are now spending, Brazil is spending 10 times what we have spent, 10 times. Even there, the people will not really ultimately benefit financially. That's just a fact. But the country has benefited, tourism has benefited, the national brand has benefited. We are now 36. And I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned that need to be applied.
Dr. Denny Jordan with me as well, the 2010 Local Organizing Committee CEO. Denny, your thoughts on that, the fact that there are people now wondering why they don't, I understand the infrastructure issues that you spoke about earlier on, but for many people, they don't see the tangible benefits. They feel it's come at a price and maybe it's not really worth it. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think you must ask, what are the things that happened leading up to the World Cup? One of the things that happened from 1990 was the infrastructure stagnation in the country, no investment in infrastructure. Even before the World Cup, the government came up with the policy of Argisa. And one of the central issues there has been investment in infrastructure. Even now, as the government finalized this budget, the 1.3 trillion rand, the main focus is investment in infrastructure. So the investment in infrastructure in the World Cup must not be seen in isolation. It must be seen in the context of a plan to invest in infrastructure probably from 2000 onwards, and it's going to continue. So if you look at the overall budget for infrastructure investment, then the investment in World Cup specific infrastructure is insignificant. So that is the first point. Do we benefit from the infrastructure? Of course, as South Africans we do. The second point is the point that is raised. I know from 1997 I traveled almost every city in the world, and the first question you ask was about crime. They're not asked, they tell you the country is falling apart under crime. And therefore, you cannot get to the conversation of investment, of trade. You have to first deal with the question of crime. And this country has probably from 2000 to 2010 has spent about almost 300-400 million on marketing, on promotion, but it did not succeed to get that monkey off our back, crime. In 30 days, that thing is gone. When you now go to, and whether you go to the United States or Russia or Germany or ever, they talk about the wonderful World Cup. The third point is that we moved the perception of both the country and the continent from a cannot-do country and a cannot-do continent to a can-do. Everybody told us, you cannot do this. You don't have the capacity. You don't have the know-how. Now, everyone is talking about the possibilities and the prospects of South Africa and the African continent. In 2009, the economists wrote Africa the hopeless continent. After 2010, they wrote about the hopeful continent. Everybody's talking about investment. Everybody's talking about the fact that some of the fastest growing economies in the world are African countries. There is a real focus and discussion on economic development and growth on our continent now. That discussion did not even make home base. The first thing is, Africa, they cannot do it.
Okay, so you convinced things indeed have changed. We're going to talk about the stadium in Cape Town and then maybe the lessons of deadlines and social cohesion. I'll get answers from both of you, and we'll do that right after this.
Afternoon Talk on SAFM.
So July 11, 2010 is when the World Cup ended. July 11, 2012 is exactly 2 years ago since that World Cup ended. We're talking about some of the benefits, some of the lessons learned with Danny Jordaan as well as Dr. Nicholas E. Barrell. I want to read through some of the SMSs. In the meantime, South Africa is the best in the world. We were taken cheaply, but we proved otherwise. My friend in the USA still thinks we are the best host. Comes from Zweli. South Africa, for once, looked away from their past and lived in the present. We did everything except feel a decent team. No team in soccer history has ever had more money wasted on them. Another one, of course, Danny will be enthusiastic about it. He was a prime beneficiary and probably never has to work again. What is the country benefiting from the big, expensive stadiums now that the World Cup is gone? South Africans, that is all colours, were united. Unlike today, the country is divided. Comes from Sajni, and the World Cup was a huge and vastly expensive non-event, which only should be staged in first world countries which can afford such extravaganzas. And okay, that's about it. I'll read some of the others later on. We'll get through that quickly. Then just to your thoughts, Nicholas, on the issue of because I want to touch on social cohesion, but the issue of stadiums. Big debate now about Cape Town Stadium. Is it a good example of a stunning stadium in the right place for a tourist, but not the right place for football lovers post the World Cup? And therefore the debate about
really,
digging it up,
that's really the responsibility of the city. It's a responsibility of the PSL. They've got two great football teams in Cape Town. They have to just fill the stands, and they have to take lessons from Germany, where they have an average spectator record of 70,000.
But that's not going to happen, and you know that.
Well, why can't it happen?
Why can't you maybe Chippa United?
Why can't you have the same affiliation that you have to Chiefs and Pirates to other teams? It does happen in Britain. It does happen in other countries. That's what we have to work towards.
But for now, we're faced with that problem that Ajax Cape Town certainly can't fill in 70,000 people unless they're playing maybe Barcelona. I'm not too sure whether they'll do it when they play Man United next week. Danny Jordaan, you want to talk about that one, the Cape Town Cape Town Stadium?
Well, I think in the long run, that is a matter that must be resolved between the city and the sporting authorities there. I have no doubt that between rugby, football, and many other opportunities for the use of the stadium, that stadium can become viable. But there obviously needs to do, a lot of work needs to be done. And the point is that other than 2-3 clubs in the country, the other clubs are averaging 500 to 1,000 spectators. And that is an issue. It's very low for a league that we promote as the best league on the continent. Even if you go to Rwanda or Burundi, you will see 20, 30,000 people supporting their clubs. So it cannot be that we accept it's impossible that these clubs cannot have a stronger base in the city where they play.
All right, so for now, what would you tell people who say that we bought ourselves a whole series of Ferraris, as in the stadiums, and all we needed were, polos, and no disrespect to the polos. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think in the end, let me just say this. If you're going to have a Rugby World Cup, as the rugby authorities has already made a bid for the Rugby World Cup, if that Rugby World Cup comes in 2017 or 2020, the use of the stadium for those rugby tests will be these new stadiums. It will not be the old existing stadium. And so your point then is you will then have to either upgrade the existing stadiums to bring them in compliance with international criteria, which would be 300-400 million per stadium, or you have ready-made stadiums and use it. But in the interim, I think that we have to address this question. And I think perhaps we must not just talk about the matter of the Cape Town Stadium as and when it hits the news. We should actually engage on this matter to try and find a solution, because it is one of the best stadiums in the world, in the best locations in the world.
All right, what I want to pick up on now, we've got about 2 minutes to go, just on the issue of social cohesion, because clearly you know, and you touched on it earlier, the social cohesion summit last week, nothing displayed the coming togetherness of South Africans better than the 2010 World Cup, and that's my comment, and certainly nothing since Mandela and the other Rivonia trialists were released. The question therefore is, why did we get it right during the soccer, and how then can we bottle that and then get it right for permanently? Danny, your thoughts first. I'll get to Nicholas after that.
Well, I think it is to get believability in the project. People, of course, saw value, and because the international media was around, and the hype that was there. But also remember, just before the World Cup, there were all of the issues of xenophobia on right-wing backlash and all of these things. And yet every South African came together, put on the jersey, had the flags straight from cars and windows of office blocks. Every South African truly felt that this is an event that we must welcome the world, and we have a responsibility as South Africans to just be South Africans. And that is, of course, what Mandela said, it's the power of sport. It is a glue that can bind a nation, and we've seen that. We've seen it in Soweto when the Blue Bulls played there.
Indeed. But we
saw it at the concert in Soweto.
Okay, but would you then say...
so it's really that South Africans felt that we are all South Africans. We are looking to the present and the future, and move together in the same direction.
Okay, I've got probably just wonderful. I've just got about two quick questions to ask both of you. I'll do that in a minute. Let's get the news headlines first. 2:30.
Thanks. Good afternoon. I'm Vignesh Naidu. The Free Market Foundation will take government to court over proposed smoking regulations. The foundation says the proposed banning and regulation of the tobacco industry is a violation of human dignity and is against the Constitution. Gauteng Local Government and Housing MEC Humphrey Mamezi has resigned. A series of allegations have been levelled against Mamezi relating to his alleged improper use of a government-issued credit card. And the Tshwane Metro has launched the bus rapid transit system in the Pretoria suburb of Hatfield. Details at 3.
We got Moneymakers coming up in the next, couple of minutes or so. Then we'll go to Misha Gasha talking to me, putting him in the spotlight later on, so don't miss that. Let's just wrap up with the issue of the 2010 World Cup 2 years after the event. Nicholas, your thoughts on social cohesion?
Well, the analysis really for me is that what these 30 days did is that they activated the motivational intelligence of everybody in the country by basically activating three factors. First of all, there was a joint challenge, and that's what South Africans have always been good at. A joint challenge of hosting the best World Cup ever. Secondly, there was instant connection the minute you put on your Bafana shirt. You became part of one team. And thirdly, everybody could make a contribution by what was the secret weapon of the country and the 12th men, according to Coach Pereira, the Vuvuzela. Okay. That was fervently endorsed by the visitors.
That noisy Vuvuzela, indeed. Your thoughts about deadlines. How important were these imposed deadlines, meaning the games had to start on the 11th of June? 2010. How important were those deadlines in South Africa achieving what it achieved?
Well, critically important. Obviously, that's what it is all about. You cannot just have sit around the table if you want social cohesion. You've got to turn this into a game. And you've got to have your goalposts, and you've got to have your challenge, and you've got to have the ball. And that's what it was all about. And that really what is the secret formula that made this event so powerful.
Okay, Danny, quick one as we've got about 2 minutes to go. Deadlines and the importance of that in meeting South Africa's goals. And can we then create new deadlines, beyond 2010 now so that we can achieve even more as a nation?
No, for any successful project, you must set and respect deadlines. And I think those are lessons that we will do well to take into every endeavor. When the schools open, when the schools close, when the university opens, when they close, when we register, when we no longer register. And the nation has responded to celebrating almost the achievement when the stadiums were ready before time and every other of the projects and even the events. Every single match started on time. There was not a single glitch in broadcasting, and no wonder.
All right,
The world voted the World Cup the best ever.
So lastly,
as of FIFA history.
okay, Danny, then lastly, outside another big sporting event like the rugby and cricket and soccer World Cups, can South Africa bottle all those lessons and replicate them in other fields of expertise so that we as a nation can advance?
Yes, certainly. When I went to Sochi, the architects for building of the stadium in Sochi in Russia are South Africans. Many South African companies are now in Brazil. So, of course, the world is looking forward to the lessons learned and the expertise gained by South Africans and South African companies in delivering their own World Cup. And so there's a huge benefit for many of those who worked on the 2010 World Cup in South Africa.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. Danny Jordaan, thanks so much. Need to probably get you in the spotlight in studio maybe one of the days talking about your life away from the actual 2010 World Cup and find out exactly who Danny Jordaan really is. Well, we'll do that some other time. Thank you for your time. Dr. Nicholas E. Battle, appreciate your input as well. All right, and you can get that book called The Nation of Champions, How Team South Africa Won the World Cup, written by Dr. Nick on Nicholas E. Battle. Right, further comments, always welcome. You can email me, ashraf@safm.coza. We go moneymakers for the next 25 minutes as we give you some vital tools and lessons to sort of get on that path of entrepreneurship. Don't miss that. It comes up after. Don't miss that. It comes up after. Don't miss that. It comes up after. Don't miss that.